Hello, and welcome to Pitching by Design. This is part of our Canon webinar business series. We had a recording glitch with our first recording of this. So Jenna and I thought that we would re-record the beginning to make sure you got all the information, and we're hoping to give you a few extra nuggets of information as well. About halfway through, you'll be connected again with the original recording, and we'll be able to hear Brian Bergeron talking about how design plays into all of this and also showing some actual examples of work. We're really excited about this, and thank you, Jenna, for taking the time to do this with us. I wanted to quickly reintroduce our speakers. We have Jenna Teeson from Teeson Reps. She has a strong history of supporting photographers, including as a photo editor for National Geographic. Her clients have included Liberty Mutual, Keurig, CVS, and Jack Daniels. She represents a really great group of photographers at Teeson Reps. She will be joined later on the original recording by Brian Bergeron, who's the principal designer at Behavior. Brian has experience on both sides of this equation, working with photographers and also with brands. His clients include Natural History Museum of LA, Twitter, and Sotheby's. We're really happy to have Brian with us on the original part of this recording. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenna, and I'm looking forward to having a little deeper conversation about this. Go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you, Marianne. Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to, again, talk about my favorite thing, which is winning more work. Over the next hour, Brian and I will break down the steps of the bidding process and give you tips on how to navigate them. I have been a rep for more than 12 years, and I have to be honest, I've won a lot of bids for my artists, but I've lost some. And I've learned a lot along the way. So let's talk about a well-designed plan to win more bids. I like to think of the bidding process and your opportunity to pitch your work to clients as 5 easy steps. The first step is your phone ringing. Your marketing worked, but now what? The second is the elusive creative call. The third step is the dreaded numbers conversation. The fourth is the all-important pitch deck or bid treatment. And Brian and I, at the end of this, spend a lot of time on this point, and we even review some real ones for you. The fifth and final step is success, and then the fun part begins. That's production and shooting. So step 1, your phone rings, or more than likely these days you receive an email from a prospective client. This is where the butterflies happen. You do that little dance in your studio, but it's really time to buckle down. It's important to remember that this process is much like a job interview, and every part of this communication will be scrutinized. In this initial step, you will communicate with the client in order to receive all of the specs of the job. And in all of that communication, you should always project a sense of confidence and curiosity, as well as preparation. A prospective client wants to know you've navigated this process before and that you know the right questions to ask. They want to know that you have confidence in your ability to produce and shoot this project. During this part of the communication, I'm always sure to reference recent shoots that are similar to what this client is looking for, so they know this is something that we can do and actually have done many times before. I always want them to feel my confidence so that they can be reassured that they made the right decision and including us in the bid. Prospective clients are always excited to hear curiosity in your voice. I hear this over and over again from art producers. They want to know that you are listening to what they're telling you about their concepts and maybe even offer your own insight. And they want to hear that you're preparing for the next steps. And those steps include the elusive creative call. But I think, Marianne, you might have some questions for me about this first step, this sort of intake step.
Yeah, definitely. Before we move on to the next slide, we talked about curiosity, and that really brought a question to my mind. When should the photographer invest in research about the client or the project? Should it be before this call or after this call? And how deep should they be digging?
Of course, in a perfect world, this call will come from a client that you have researched and gone after. Maybe it's an agency that you've showed your work at, or a client that you've, called and spoken with in the past. But often it's a call that comes out of the blue, and it's a brand that you are not yet familiar with. And so I think it's important to do research as soon as that email comes in, before you even respond. So you have a sense of who this client is, or what this brand is, and what they're doing now. But I say that with a little hesitation, because I think you should not assume that a brand is looking for a creative that's similar to what they're showing now. Often they're calling a new photographer because they want to change something about their look, right? So you shouldn't be quick to make assumptions about what you see, either on their social presence or on their website or at point of purchase.
That's a really good tip. They're obviously calling you for what you have to offer, and if it doesn't match what they've done in the past, perhaps they're looking for something new.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the next slide.
The elusive creative call.
There it is.
Yes. And art producers, I had phone calls with a few art producers when I was planning what to say to you all, and they all said the creative call is so important. It's almost as important as the pitch deck, the treatment that you're going to send them as the last step. But this is your time for a live pitch of your work to the creative team. At this point, they've seen maybe your print portfolio, for sure, your website, they've seen the work, but this is when they want to get a sense for who you are and what you'll be like to work with in both the pre-production and on the shoot, right? Those are stressful times, and they're very important times for the client, and they want to know that you'll be a good partner. So you have to think, are you professional in the way you handle yourself on this call? Do you have the experience to manage a production like this? They'll be sort of thinking of that as they're hearing your answers to their questions. On this call, what creatives are most looking for is to get a sense that a photographer is a good collaborator, that she'll work with the creative team to elevate and deliver the concepts, and absolutely no egos allowed here. Leave those at home. This is a time to be curious. And I use this word a lot, and art producers use this word a lot. This is really important to prospective clients. Be curious about who this client is and what they need you to communicate with your pictures. Do your homework. We just talked about this. In advance of the call, research the brand, but also really absorb the creative brief that they've sent to you, because that will indicate any sort of changes in the look of this brand. So you'll see what is already existing maybe out there in the world on their website, but then you're going to see what this creative brief tells you in terms of what this campaign is about. And I always say you should join a call with at least 3 questions prepared. So be really curious about what they're asking of you. And the answers to all of these will help you prepare your bid presentation. But also on this call, it will help the client to know that you want this job, that you're taking this seriously. A senior art producer from a national agency recently told me this story, and I wanted to tell it to you today because I think it highlights the importance of the creative call. She told a story about a particular bid for a global brand. It was a big job. They had identified 7 photographers to bid, but they had one they really wanted to shoot it. And this person was going to be the recommend to the client. His portfolio was absolutely the best match to the creative concept. And all he had to do was to nail the creative call. And I'll spoil the story and tell you that he did not. And I think there's a lot to learn from this. He missed the professionalism step by taking the call from his car with a dying cell phone battery and no charger. Devastating. He listened to what the creative team was saying, but didn't have any feedback. And she said he had no questions prepared to ask the creative team. So he didn't demonstrate any curiosity and no sense of collaboration, didn't really have any feedback on the concepts. And so the producer told me that when the call ended, which was abruptly because this photographer's cell phone died in the middle of the creative call, they just crossed him off the list. They didn't even pass him along to the client as an option. So it's a sad story, but I think a lot of lessons can be learned from that. And I think it's important to always remember that this creative call is your opportunity to show your value as a creative and a collaborator, and to help them know that you should be the one to win the bid. And I think that if you've navigated this step and the first step, then you're in a good position to have a really candid conversation about the budget. But before that, Marianne, I bet you have a question about this, the elusive creative call.
Yeah, I mean, all this is such great information. I think the professionalism, it sounds so simple to say it, but making sure you're on time, all those little things add up. And if you can, like, that's half the battle, right? And if you can win that battle, then you can have the creative call, which is, I think, where we all want the decisions to be made, right?
Yeah, I think that the way you handle yourself on this call is a window for them to see how you might behave on set and pre-production and on set, right? Like your level of professionalism. And so it tells them a lot.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you. Are we ready for the next slide?
The dreaded budget conversation.
Here we go.
The absolute most important part of this is to have respect for the prospective client. This is not the time to sound greedy or angry. It should be an honest conversation about what type of shoot the client has budgeted for. I like to relate this to buying a dress. You know, when a client calls and asks, what does a lifestyle shoot cost? It's really no different than saying, what does a party dress cost, right? You can buy a dress at Old Navy or you can buy a dress at Prada. And of course, they're very different price points, but they're both dresses you can wear to a party. So I try to skirt around that question and instead ask them questions about what type of production they budgeted for. And those questions go much deeper than just what's the usage, what's the intended usage, but right off the bat, what type of a production are you looking for? Do you want to use models or real people? Are we shooting in the client's house, or can we scout locations? Maybe how many wardrobe changes are you looking for? The answers to those questions really give me a sense for how large of a production a client is prepared to pay for. And then it helps me understand where their total budget might shake out, sort of generally. But of course, I always just come right out and say it. Do you have a specific budget for this project? They very well might be evasive, and that's totally fine. And I think my advice to you is allow that to be okay. And at least you're going to walk away from the conversation with the answers to the questions that you previously asked. It really will tell you a lot about what they can afford and what they've budgeted. And most importantly, know your worth. And I think that you can then have this conversation with ease, because you can be willing to walk away from a job that will not pay your bills or might be below the market value. I could go on about this, but probably for another time. And I know that ASMP does a really nice job of hosting webinars to cover this topic. And it's an important one because we all have a responsibility to help educate clients about the value of what we do.
Great information. Thank you, Jenna. Are we ready for our next?
Yeah. So assuming the budget seems realistic and you're still excited to be considered for this project, now it's time to pitch yourself visually. I call this a bid treatment. Some people call it a pitch deck, but most importantly, our producers say this is required, like from more than 75% of the jobs they bid out. And it's a really important part of their decision about which photographer to choose. And Brian has lots of insight on this, as he has worked from both the sort of photographer's point of view, helping folks like me prepare these treatments, and also on the client side, receiving these and considering them for his clients. So I'm excited for you all to hear what Brian has to say.
This webinar was born out of a conversation that I had had with a client who had asked me to do some video, which I don't normally do. And so I had partnered with a production company here in Rhode Island, and they put our bids together, and what they sent me back was this amazing pitch deck. And I immediately thought, wow, it would be such a great way to, as an industry, bring up the value of photography and professionalism, even at any level. I think that some of my clients would probably think this is going overboard. And I also think that I probably have clients that don't know that they wanted this in their life because it's so awesome. So I'm really looking forward to passing this recording off to the original recording from October 21st. And you're going to hear Brian talk about why this pitch deck or bid treatment is so important and all the parts of it. And he'll also be showing you some examples. So thanks for catching up with us. Hope you enjoy the second part.
Hello, everybody. And I think I'll start off by explaining what I'm looking for in a bid treatment, what exactly it is. So Jenna spoke about the creative call, which is 100% like, it's an information gathering, and it's also your initial pitch. But the bid treatment is a reflection for me that the photographer understands what I'm asking for, and that they're illustrating that through the way they're speaking about the project, our collaboration, any sort of imagery that they're talking about for inspiration, and at the end of the day, the cost estimate, as well. So and the final deliverables. That's all spelled out in this bid treatment. So for me, that's first and foremost what I'm looking for. Secondly, and nearly as paramount is that the photographer is able to demonstrate that they're capable of doing this job. I like your portfolio. I've called you. We've had a conversation, and now it's like, okay, here's my relevant examples. Here's how I'm going to approach it so that you feel confident that we're going to get this done on time and on budget. And then lastly, it's like, how do you, as the photographer, as what I consider a fellow creative, how do you intend to approach this project? I may have I may tell you, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and it needs to look like blah, 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 but and that's fine. Are you going to execute it exactly the way I want? Or what are you potentially bringing to the table as a photographer who is bidding against other photographers? What are you personally doing to add to the creative end result? So what would my project look like through your lens, through your eyes? So why is this important? I should say that this bid treatment, sometimes, you have a certain number of people on a creative call, and then you send over a bid treatment with a cost estimate that could potentially just go to the art producer, but it could also go to many other people. So you're kind of sharing your context on the project with potentially more than just me. So it's something to have in mind as you're developing this. Having just like a cost estimate on the project may be presented to a couple of different people who don't have all the knowledge on the specific project. So it's just something to keep in mind. It does get passed around. So my kind of like philosophy on working with photographers or illustrators or et cetera, is that I'm a creative. I have my own vision, but I'm really looking to collaborate with somebody to bring, my ideas or the organization's or ideas to life. And my goal is that the person that we select is going to amplify my vision. It's, you know, it's not just going to satisfy and check off the box for my vision, but it's actually going to make it even better than I imagined, right? So, you know, so I think it is important to, you know, that it should illustrate that it will achieve the goals that we're setting forth for the project. And then, but then also, again, like I was mentioning earlier, it's like, what are your special skills that you bring to the table? Are you amazing with getting the best out of people? Do you have a sense of fashion? Like these types of things that are specific to you as a person and as a fellow creative that will, again, support and amplify our project. I'm always really interested in that because, again, you know, Jenna said about, you know, 7 photographers bidding for a project, you know, what are the kind of key ways in addition to your work, and maybe that sometimes don't come across in your work, you know? I just did a shoot at the Natural History Museum, and our photographer is just magical at being able to pull out the expressions from our models and actors, and it's just like, okay, that's something you can talk about, you know. And you know, be able to kind of point out some of the things that, you know, in your portfolio maybe doesn't come across that you actually are responsible for those types of things. So so that's those are the ways it's in, you know, that it's important for me specifically. And so in terms of the content of, yes, it should have the cost outlined, all of the costs and assumptions that for the project. There is nothing worse than getting the email after the shoot that says, oh, we have these additional costs, these addendums, these things that need to be clarified. It really, and that have not been at least a conversation prior to the final invoice, right? So I know that there is scope creep. I know that there's, you know, things that happen on set, et cetera, but 100% that should be talked about before you receive a final invoice. And hopefully you get most of that into the initial bid treatment and estimate. It should increase, you know, it should include any timelines, you know, expectations, including kickoff meetings, production, number of days for the shoot, when the images will be delivered, and turnaround for any post-production if you're responsible for that. And I'm keenly interested and aware of like what your creative approach is going to be. I get really excited about when photographers provide mood boards that, you know, as inspiration, doesn't have to be, you know, to explain the way you're going to light something or et cetera. Particularly in this time of COVID, it's really important to get a clear understanding who your team is. Is it you, an assistant? Is it, you know, is there a tech involved? If there's video, because of the space limitations, specifically for this last museum shoot, we could only have 10 people in one space at one time. So it's important to understand who is on your team, separate from the actual talent and anybody else who's in the room, including myself. So, and then one thing that I think, and we'll see this in one of the pitch decks, that is the idea of like, here's what we need, here's the cost of what we need to get the job done. But like, you know, should you need, you know, additional B-roll, or you need some, you know, some quick footage for Instagram or something like that, here's like an additional proposal, an additional cost, you know, so like you're sort of upselling, you know, it's like you're covering what the client wants, but then, you know, oh, there could be, you know, they could want this after the fact, and maybe I can try to get that included in the initial project bid. So you're clearly stating what the client wants, but then you're potentially offering up other packages, if you will, to and that the client may not be immediately thinking about and might be inspired to go and find more budget for. it should definitely outline final deliverables and usage for those imagery. We just want to be really clear and careful about how these images are to be used. And then I think it's really important to just, talk about either your relationship to the brand that you're pitching to, or that your excitement, and finding some relatable way to talk about yourself as a collaboration with the brand. I think it's doing a little bit of research about what their latest campaign was, a social media thing that they did. Being able to mention that is, I think, just like an additional hook and a way to get people hooked in. Okay, so on the design side, because I do proposals for several photographers, and also just because I'm looking at these proposals, it's very important the way it's laid out clearly, that you have spaces between your sections, you have your schedule, you have your bid, and just like, it's fine to have it on multiple pages. It's like, it's more important to like have like one point of focus. If you're describing one shot and you have a mood board and your relevant images, you could have that all together on one page. It's important to tell a story of how you're going to approach the project at the start. I think it's just, rather than just like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in a bulleted fashion. But you should keep your copy clear and concise. This is basic, but my personal preference is to keep your presentations horizontal. Again, this goes back to the fact that your presentation may be shared, and in this virtual world that we're living in now, it's everything's on either Google Hangouts and Zoom, and it's horizontal format. So it's unless you're on your mobile phone, but anyway, I feel like it's gonna best represent, you can get it as large as possible in those presentation screens. And then one thing which I actually, from my experience working at Twitter, when they reach out for advertisers, they actually, when they talk to, like, if it's Twitter plus Gatorade in their presentation, they'll actually change some graphic it was like a lower thirds thing that they did, so that it was actually the brand color. So it was Gatorade's color, and it actually had Twitter plus Gatorade in graphically, as a constant reminder that you're designing this presentation tailoring it specifically for them and not copying and pasting. So anyways, that is, and I think that's it on that side. And I think we're going to go right into some reviewing of presentations next. Great.
So thank you to Kelly Davidson, who submitted this. She was booked for a job today, so she's not able to join us on the webinar, but we are recording, and so she will get to hear your feedback, Brian. So this is a multiple page document, and I can scroll through as you're ready, but here's her opening page.
Yeah, so right away this is a collaboration, so that's identified with the logos and graphics, which I find understandable and clear. And then, goes right into, Kelly goes right into her bio, and talking about relevant experience. It's clear. I think this is probably where I would maybe recommend adding a statement about, again, about the collaboration with the company that she's pitching here. I think that could be a sort of either precede this, or could go like right alongside this bio, for lack of a better word. There is, it does go right into locations, jumps right into that, which I think is, it's interesting that that's the order. I mean, in my just to be frank, I feel like it's a little bit jarring to kind of go right into this, but okay. So, and then, you know, the samples of work, this is really great. It just gives me an overview of the tone, you know, the spirit, you know, I'm getting, it's lifestyle, but it's, you know, it's warm, it's upbeat. This is, you know, this is not, you know, I believe this was for a hospital or a nursing home, excuse me. So it's a little bit also surprising. It's like, oh, okay, this is a really interesting, you know, approach, you know, in terms of what she's selecting for her relevant examples. She's got several pages of that. You know, I think it's good because it shows consistency in the, you know, in the warmth and the spirit, you know. You know, could she edit it a few out? Maybe, yeah. But I think it does provide a nice overview of you know, what her working style is like, and, you know, potentially how she intends to shoot for this project.
Would you recommend moving this up in the deck, possibly ahead
Yeah,
of the shot list?
ahead of the shot list, and because I really feel like there's, at the beginning of any pitch deck, it's like, this is me, this is why I want to collaborate with you, this is how I'm going to do it, and then here's the specifics about, like, you know, how we're going to approach it, and the tactics and the costs, right? So it's like you kind of get them hooked in with like the romance of working together, and the glossy visuals. And I think that's why I was kind of struggling a little bit with the locations right off the bat before the work. Yeah, so I agree there, Jenna. And then, you know, I mean, the spreadsheet about the costs and everything, that's just what, you know, that's fine, that's what it looks like. You know, there's not really anything you can do to dress up the numbers, you know, necessarily. And also you want to be like really crystal clear about that. So, so I wouldn't spend too much time getting super fancy or making this looking like, you know, highly designed or anything, because it just literally has to.
I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to make a plug here for BlinkBid. I'm not a paid sponsor, but I love BlinkBid for many reasons, but this is one of them. And when I output a PDF of my estimates out of BlinkBid, they look really nice.
Okay.
And they give you all of these breakdowns too. And so then you can drop that piece of the PDF into this presentation. So that's one recommendation I might have made here is just to use a software like BlinkBid that would put out something a little bit prettier. But it's great the way she's very clearly spelled out every cost, which is exactly what the clients want to see.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So maybe we should move on. Oh, and then the thank you at the end, obviously it's critical. I'm curious why the image is so small, but it seems like a fun image. Yeah, so.
Oh, here's me.
Yeah.
So I want to have this like candid conversation with you, Brian, about vertical versus horizontal. So I have been stuck in this vertical world because when I spit out my BlinkBid estimate, it's vertical. Right. And so I've been working in this template, which you've helped me with. But I wonder if there's a way, and we'll go through it with everyone, but a way to make the vertical estimate fit into a horizontal presentation. Because now I want to take the advice you were giving us.
Yeah, it's just because, I mean, honestly, in the last 8 months, I literally just talked to people virtually most of the time, and a lot of, and you know, and present some of these things, and it just horizontal is just been working best. And it's also just gives a lot of the images a lot of room to breathe. And yeah, so what I, you know, right away, I mean, I worked with Jenna on her branding in general. So I, you know, and one of the, and this is also her project was really interesting because it's like she represents several photographers, and so this is really clear that this is, you know, this is coming from the artist, the photographer's rep, and I think is I think it's just very visually clear that this is already going to, you know, it's going to have some of the production notes that, and sets the tone by putting the client first on the title page. I do appreciate the, you know, like having just a, you know, recognizable, you know, if I'm pitching for Jack Daniels, I want to see myself like right off the bat in the cover page here. So.
And so these were the comps that they had shared with me when they sent the initial bid request. And this is what we ended up shooting.
Oh, right. Okay, great. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah. Using, I mean, if they give you assets to, you know, to play with, that's even better. So that's great. You know, I do like that it starts off with like a really nice brief bio of David as the photographer, and you know, just some affirmation around, you know, the types of clients that he's worked for, and you know, a big plug for the studio, which is like, you know, that's actually a really amazing you know, asset, to, you know, not have to find a place to shoot, as, you know, as well. You know, I think that's in my past work with the Museum of Modern Art's retail department, we always went with a photographer that had some space, or is able to just organize this space. So it's like, we don't have to, that's just another thing we have to think about. So, you know, it could be included in the price, and if you don't have your own space, et cetera. But I do like that it's immediately like, here's what we have on offer, right off the bat. And you know, there isn't and you know, there isn't and I, you know, again, I don't know all of the background on like the conversations in this project, but I do think, I do recommend that maybe there's a spot for just talking about the collaboration as well, and then segueing into David's work, which is all beautiful and well laid out, and I think would look great horizontal. So yeah.
I told you I'm working on one tonight. You're gonna help me make it horizontal.
Yeah. So and then you know, going down to this toolkit idea, which, you know, Jen and I have been talking about, and this kind of touches a little bit on like how to leverage the work, and you know, and it makes it very clear, and in a very simple way, that okay, you're going to pay X amount for these assets, but look at the different combinations and the different things you'll be able to do with them as part of this price package. So I think this is a great you know, slide to add that just kind of talks about how the assets could be used in unique ways to just, you know, to leverage the work that you're paying for.
Absolutely. I have to give credit to the photographer here, David, who I know is on this call, because when he saw the initial ask, which is, you know, these were some of the concepts, and realized that we would be shooting these cocktails and the bottles for these specific layouts. And that it might be a sort of value add, like you talked about, Brian, for us to tell them that he would shoot them in a way that they would have assets that could work in many other campaigns as well. And so, you know, it's, I guess maybe toolkit is a new word for library. And this is a word we've been hearing from a lot of our clients lately. And it was something that David recommended. We sort of pitched to this client as like, we're all in the studio for 3 days anyways, let's shoot these drinks in a few different ways so that we're giving you more value for the dollar spent, and creating this library or this toolkit that this client can then use in other campaigns.
Right. So the next 2 pages, you know, I would just flip them. So you know, David talks about his approach, and then I would go into the shot list. That would just be like a minor thing, just for the next time. And because to me, the shot list is kind of like a nice segue to the actual numbers, right? It's like you kind of go from the romance again to like, to the, okay, here's the more tactical elements that we're going to be doing. And then the numbers follow towards the end. And then there's a thank you. So I know the numbers aren't part of this.
That's for another conversation.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, nice. And I feel like there's just it's very clear. There's like a nice indication at the top of the page that says like, this is what you're looking at next. This is what you're looking at next. So I think it's very clear and focused and concise. So
thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. So our next one. Okay. So this is the one.
Should we skip ahead, Brian? Do you think do we have room? Do we have time for 2 more? We have about 10 minutes. Why don't I skip ahead to another photographers, and then we'll circle back to this one that was a collaboration between 2 teams. And I feel like, I mean, I want mine. This one is stunning, and I want mine to look like this. And I think this will be a good one to wrap with. And this is sort of like the goal for all of us. I'll go fast. Here we go. Okay. So this is another photographers, and I think it's a really great one for Brian to break down, because a lot of the submissions we received looked like this. And this is, I'll let you speak to it, Brian, but it includes all of the really important information, but it could maybe use a little design boost.
Yeah. And so, you know, exactly, all the information's here. It just almost needs to be kind of like, particularly the second page, which has got everything about the approach, your inspiration, and relevant images. It just does not have enough space in this current layout to really inspire. And I think it has some really inspiring things in it. So it's almost like it's just from a design perspective, it's not getting the chance to kind of like breathe and let you soak in the approach. And again, it's all about, in my mind, it's all about kind of setting the tone with your understanding of the project, who you are as a photographer and creative, and here's your relevant examples, and here's how I want to approach each of your shots. I think it's great that each shot is outlined, and that there's some swipe there, but I think it could just be, each shot could be on a page with like your relevant examples and some mood board. You have to be careful to make sure, if you are using swipe, to make sure that it's noted that way, which I think this is fine the way it's, but I think it could just be, everything could just have a little bit more room to breathe. And I feel like it would be a little bit more inspiring, I think. And again, showing what you can bring to the table with your relevant examples, which maybe doesn't have to be in each shot, it could be like what David did, and Kelly, where they have just like a mosaic of relevant examples from your photography portfolio, and then just let the mood boards sit with your creative approach. So I think this one's, it's got all the elements. It's just like it just needs, it could benefit from some design in there to really help inspire.
I think it's important to remember that agencies are used to seeing 20-page decks, right? And so don't be afraid to use more space and make this document 10 pages or more.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, when I was a designer in my early design days, it was like, oh, my resume always had to be on one page. Like, as a designer, that's like a bad thing to have a 2-page resume. But like, it's like on a grander scale here, this pitch just really, it really needs the you don't want to be like really overly spacious, but like you want to be concise, like I said earlier, but it just like really letting, giving room to inspire with your, the thoughts on your creative process would help this, I believe.
So I think this next one does a really good job of that, and it's a great one to end with.
Yes. So this one is the one that Marianne mentioned at the beginning, and what from the very beginning, this sets up, it's very much like a very friendly, warm approach for like, we're excited to get on the water with you and, do, and then this idea of friendly competition, it's, and then just, that there's a team involved that's going to, pull the story out for you, and, and that they're confident that they're going to be able to pull, something together that's really terrific for the client. And then it sort of segues into, just about the team, which is, just very, it doesn't have to be overly verbose, but it does, I don't know if we can go to the next slide. There we go. Thank you. Oh, so yeah, it very quickly tells you a little bit about each of the, so this is Marianne and Animus, they're like partnering together. And then it just gives examples. Animus, actually, all of this is video, so you can actually click on these PDFs and the videos come up, which is, it's nice to be able to see those examples of relevant work. And then Marianne's examples follow. And again, that like mosaic works fine, and it's very clear who's doing what in each of these, I guess, boards of creative examples. And then it kind of just segues into, how they're going to approach this. And one thing that I found really interesting about this particular pitch deck is that, again, this is like, there's like 3 options outlined here on like what we could do for exponentially, the incrementally more dollars, right? So it's like, there's 3 different creative approaches. The first one, maybe let's say this is what you, Brian, the client, are asking me to do. And so, here's, if we can just go back to like option 1 for a second. Thank you. Yeah, it's just like, it's 1 day of filming. There's a crew. We're going to, we're going to do some interviews, and the narrative will be, this is what you asked for, let's say. And then like the subsequent ones are like, oh, well, if you wanted to do some additional, if you wanted to add a drone and you wanted to, and this is what you could do with it. And, it all of a sudden becomes like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe that's something that I want, and it's like, it's an interesting kind of way to, again, upsell. And then the third one, it's talking about like a documentary film, like a documentary about this competition. And it's like, oh, wow, I think I need that too, So it's like, there's this, it's like a subtle upsell, but it's I think a really interesting idea. It's not gonna, this is not gonna work for every project. There might be just like, we need to shoot Jack Daniel's bottles and that's it, you know, like, but you know, maybe they want some, you know, video of some pouring of the liquor or something like that, you know, and you can kind of like suggest these things and what additionally it might be in case they needed it. That can also come across in your creative call and conversation too, I'm imagining. It doesn't necessarily always have to wait for the pitch, you know, but I think this, what I appreciated about this was it just, it like gave, it was inspiring, it gave options, and it kind of talked in a very brief way about what you could do with the additional, you know, assets that you're paying for. So and then it was of course very well laid out, and the deliverables are here again, short, sweet, just boom, boom, boom. Here's the things that we're going to be bringing to the table for you. And you know, and I think, and then what I also appreciated was this next steps, you know, it's like, okay, like, let's get started. Like, let's like figure out like what we need to do. What your next steps are as a creative once you get the job. So it's, I think it's, and it kind of makes you feel like, okay, let's get ready to go, you know? So it has a nice feeling to it at the end. So, and it includes the contact information, obvious, or maybe not so obviously, I don't know. Hopefully people remember to put their contact information at the end. So, but yeah, so I think there's, what I also really, from the submissions that we got, just seeing the variety is like really interesting, you know, and I know there's a variety of different types of projects. But you know, when you're triple bidding on a project, or there's 7 photographers, oh my God, I don't know if I'd ever do that, but that's, but that's intense. But you know, it's like, how do you stand out, you know? So this is, I think these are some nice examples of like, not only the talent variety, but also like the approach, you know? And yeah, so anyway, I think that's it for us. Marianne?
Thank you guys. That was really great. It's especially nice to sort of see the examples and hear you talk about the details inside them. That's really cool. Thank you. And thank you to Katisha and Kelly Davidson and David Butler and Marianne Lee for submitting. It's really helpful, and it's always great when people are willing to share things. We've got questions. So guys, I just want to remind you, if you have questions you'd like answered, please put them in the Q&A and I'll answer them there. If you want to just say hi to anybody, feel free to use the chat. So I'm going to start right at the top from Gabriella. She asked, do you find clients are straightforward in responding to the question of whether a job didn't come through because of creative or numbers?
I will answer that one. Actually asked a producer this last week, and I asked her, are you always forthcoming with, one, the fact that the photographer lost the bid, and 2, that information? And she said, you have to develop a thick skin as a producer. And I think that we do too on our side of it. Photographers need to learn how to take rejection. And it's important, no matter when you feel that rejection, to ask the question about why, because that's how you're going to grow as an artist. And I think that most producers are willing to give that information if they are asked in the right way. If you're asking in a way that is respectful and is a genuine ask, so that you as an artist can grow and you can maybe understand the market a little bit better. But I think that if it's coming from a place of like disappointment and anger, then they might be less likely to answer the question.
That's interesting. Thanks. So, Gabrielle, I hope that answers your question. The next one is Joe. I'm going to say his last name because I think it's cool. Joe Rondinelli. Hopefully I pronounced it right. It's a good time. He says, hello, Brian and Jenna. Would you recommend putting a generic treatment on your website, obviously one that doesn't suck, to demonstrate your creative ability and understanding of the importance of the deck/process? So I guess what he's asking is, would it be good to put something on your website that would be kind of a generic sort of treatment to show how you work to prospective clients?
I would argue that your website is that in and of itself, right? That it should, the content and design of your website should give them that information, and that this pitch deck, this bid treatment is sort of a consolidated version of that is also tailored to the specific ask. So it will look a lot like your website in terms of the branding. It will have samples of your images that might already live on your website. It will have your bio, but then it's also going to have the information that pertains to how you're going to approach this project, and how well you understand what the ask is. But I think Brian will also weigh in on this.
Yeah, no, and I do think it's like in your bio or, about the artist or, section, like to be able to like talk a little bit about what you bring to the table, and your strengths, I think is okay. I think just what Jenna said, like, each client is going to expect that you're tailoring this just for them. And if they kind of see something on your website and then you're seeing it again in a bid treatment, you're not doing yourself a favor, I feel like. So I would save that aspect of your approach for a very tailored experience with your potential client.
That makes a lot of sense. After I saw the pitch deck that you guys saw with the boat company and Animus Studios, I thought that was pretty awesome. And I personally would like to create something that's generic enough that when the clients come in, I can tailor it to them. So it's sort of pre-made for me to make it easier for me. And then I would go in and tweak it to each situation. I also, have some clients that would need this, some clients that probably don't know they need it, but would love it, and other clients that I just really want to knock their socks off because I really maybe want the job. So this is in my future. So Kate asks, do you feel it's okay to show someone else's work in a mood board included in a treatment, or should you only show your own work? It's a good question. I don't know.
I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this, Brian. I have never done that, but like from the client side, from a creative director's point of view, if the photographer clearly listed the work that was not theirs and then it was more of a sort of inspiration and a mood board, would you be accepting of that?
I would be, particularly when talking about, like, if you don't have a specific example of the lighting that you plan to use, and like if you're talking about your creative approach and it's very clear that it's like, here's an example of what I'm going for, I understand that. I mean, I'm not worried. I'm not like, oh, I'm not confused that this might be, as long as it's clearly, indicated that this is the spirit of what you want to accomplish. Obviously, if you have this specific example in your portfolio, 100% use that instead, 100%, because even if it's not as relevant to the project, but you want to use a section of it and be like, this is how I plan on lighting this, it's like, here's this type of set I want to build or something like that. I feel like as long as you're really clear, I don't have any issues with that. So as long as I'm not like, wow, I think that's a Richard Avedon and it's not yours, why is that in your samples of work? So it's like, that's a different issue, but so.
But I think then you have to be prepared to speak to the fact that they will know that you have maybe never before shot that way. And then that's where your sort of like artist statement comes in, where you describe that you know how to do this. Maybe you don't already have it in your book, but you absolutely know how to do it. This is how you'll produce it. This is how you'll light it, to give them that confidence.
Excellent. That's a good answer for that one. We have another good question from Kate. She says, clients often ask me for an initial general estimate before they have confirmed the shot list. Would you still create a full treatment at that level?
So I'm doing this right now, actually. I just had an agency called me yesterday, and it's like, as usual, fast and furious, and they're trying to decide if they want to shoot it or not, and maybe they'll do it in CGI instead. And so they asked me, one, if I could provide a ballpark number by this morning, and then two, on Thursday to tomorrow, to receive the final shot list and then make a real estimate. So I did give them a ballpark because I felt confident that I had an understanding of what the shot list might look like. But I was very specific in the ballpark about how many shots might be included, how many days of shooting, and also a very wide range of dollars. And then tomorrow I will take the final shot list and do a real treatment. So that will have, the firm cost estimate, and then this whole treatment that we just talked about in terms of samples of the photographer's work and his statement about how he would approach it. So I guess to answer your question, I wouldn't do it at this stage, as sort of like ballparking stage, because you probably don't have enough information about what the ask is creatively. You probably haven't yet had a creative call when you can ask questions and take in all the information.
Yeah, I think I'll just speak to that a little bit on my own limited experience. I often won't ballpark just with the clients that I have. I find that it ends up wasting time, because once you get down to the day of, there's shots added, and I may end up with nothing in my estimate. So if I have a sneaking suspicion that shots will be added later, I will add something in there to sort of accommodate that. So it might be my creative fee, and then my creative fee for the day, for the project, and then each scene might be, $5. I'm going to use ridiculous numbers so you don't all focus on the numbers. So it might be like $5, and then each additional image might be another $5. Each additional scene might be another $5. So, and then I'll base the estimate on whatever they've told me. So they've told me 5 scenes. So if we get there and all of a sudden they want to do 8 scenes, I can be like, okay, well, we're just going to add this in here and make sure that we have that conversation and communicate it. But I'll leave room in my estimate to do that. And I think, when I put that estimate together, I would be doing a treatment like this, because this is my future professional look. So I'm going to be heading in this direction every chance I get. Yep. That's just me. So Frank, I'm gonna tackle this Polish last name. Hope everybody's ready. Frank, let's see, Rogachenski. He would love if you could answer a question about fitting estimates into the horizontal format. He's settling on sending them separately. Any thoughts? So I think he's asking, should the thing that you get from BlinkBid, because it probably comes out vertically,
yeah,
how can you put that into a horizontal frame, or should they be sent separately?
Yeah, I have that question too. Thank you for asking it. And I'm curious to hear what Brian says, because that's what I'm going to do for my next bid treatment.
I mean, I feel like my gut is telling me like you could pair it with something. You could almost like dress up your estimate with some sort of an image, or just to kind of balance it out. If you're concerned about like them being able to see it specifically, I might do a recap or a high level like estimate, like just the 3 bullet points. It's like pre-pro, act day of, and blah 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 equals this much money. and then have the specifics next to it, like, you know, on one page. So it's like you're giving that high level, you know, with some context, right, of what adds up to the final number, but then you have it right there if anybody wants to zero in on some of the specifics. That would be my recommendation, because again, if I'm presenting it to the president of the museum, I'm like, here's the budget, and you know, I'm glad I have all the specifics, but what you want to know is it's going to cost me X amount of money for this amount of usage for this amount of time, you know? And it's like, so you can kind of have just graphically, you can have just like a couple of lines over on the left, and then have the support for if there's any reason why. And 9 times out of 10, nobody wants, aside from me and the our producer or whatever, like those are the ones who need to dial into the specifics. So it's there, you know, and it's there in the presentation, but that you have like, it's almost like I hate using the word executive summary, but like of the budget, you know, is like on the, you know, right there on the left, and much, you know, and larger. So
I think that's a great solution.
Do you think there would be any downside to, you know, sending this treatment and including what you just talked about, but then also including a vertical PDF of the actual numbers?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
As long as it's separate, it's not like tacked on to the end or whatever, you know. Yeah.
All right, cool. There was actually another question about that, so thank you for answering that. Let's see. Mary asks, if clients are often looking for a photographer that has done a similar job or worked with a team that is the same as what's needed on the job, what are good ideas or strategy to get that experience in another way that gives the client the confidence that you can do the job properly without having the exact experience they're looking for?
Testing, test, especially now when, you know, a lot of photographers are experiencing a slowdown in business. It's time to test. Like, don't sit at home. Everyone's had the time to redo their website, redo their portfolio, and now is the time to get back into the studio, back onto location, and create new images for your book, but also to hone your skills and to realize what you're good at or what you need to work on. So, you know, if you're missing more portraits on location, then find a model, find a real person, bring in a stylist. You know, a lot of crew members are also looking to build their books and their experience, and they're willing to test. You know, that's often a time to create portfolio images without the limitations of a client. And so I would say the best way to get yourself that experience is to go out and just do it yourself. And then when you're on a creative call or you're writing your treatment, you have actual experience to talk about. You know, when I was shooting on location, I was shooting portraits on location last week, and this is how I approached the lighting, or this is how I approached the production. You have some like real-time examples, and it's fine that it wasn't for a client. You know, they're just interested in the fact that you've done it and you had success, and you can show them the examples of the work that came out of it.
So Jenna, sort of a little bit of a sidewinder to that. I would be curious what you advise your photographers, you know, if they're maybe looking for inspiration, should they be looking at clients that they want to work for and trying to shoot work related to that? Or should they be, you know, sort of driven by their own inspiration? Maybe they see something that triggers something, you know, how?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way I always answer it is that shooting what you think your clients want can be a slippery slope, right? You always want to stay true to who you are as an artist and what your strengths are and what your sort of goals are. But if that creative falls in line with all of those things, then absolutely, you know, go for it. If, you know, for example, David Butler shoots a lot of liquids and product, and we've seen recently an increase ask for splashes. You know, more of these beverage brands are doing splashes. And so if he has some time in the studio, he might test splashes. And that is not at all out of line with what he does. He does splashes, but maybe he needs to do different kinds of splashes or new splashes or different, you know, beverages splashing. So it's not a departure from who he is as an artist, but it is, he's sort of keeping pulse of what his market is asking for and what's, you know, what's hot right now, what brands really want to show, but doing it in his own way.
So really keeping an eye on the trends.
Yeah, I think keep an eye on the trends and knowing who you are. I hate it when photographers are like, oh, I usually shoot lifestyle, but I see like there are a lot of clients in Boston who need food. So I think I'm going to go test some food. And I feel like if you're a lifestyle photographer, you should focus on that. And you should be really good at it, and not try to be 10 different kinds of, you know, photographer and maybe not good at any of them.
Right. So that's a whole nother webinar. um, so guys, if you have any more questions, we still have a little bit of time. Just put them right in the Q&A and we will get to them. Hello, Elaine Frederick. Let me see you. So this next one is from a very new photographer, Johnny Zhang. He says, do you have any suggestions for steps to grow as an up and coming photographer? He's only been a photographer for less than a year. Full-time since last November. Oh man. And then COVID hit. He says the extreme presentation is extremely helpful. And another way of asking, he says, should he be working with an agency or can he make it work as a freelance photographer? So there's a lot to
yes, you can. And I think probably by agency, he means rep,
Sure.
right? And so I would say you can absolutely begin your career as a freelancer who is not represented by someone like me. And this is the time for you to test a lot and realize what kind of photographer you are and what you want your focus to be, what your specialty will be. And I will tell you that we are in a pandemic, but there's a lot of shooting happening. Like, don't feel like there are not opportunities. So I would keep trying to build your portfolio and market your work and know that there are opportunities out there. But maybe Brian, I can kick this to you in terms of like how he can promote himself to a client like you as a new photographer who won't come to the table yet with like tons of experience, tons of work samples. How can he pitch himself to you?
Sure. And I just want to add, I mean, there's always, I mean, assisting, you know, other photographers and kind of getting a sense of, how this type of work happens, and even, and, and connecting when you're on set with people, you're connecting with people. One thing also, and I know we're in a pandemic, but networking is completely just so important, and kind of getting being a part of this ASNP is great, and like being able to at one point I actually helped start a creative networking group just so that we could diversify, we could get some cross-pollination for that's Adhesive and Co, which is now a production agency, and they do some networking events, but they really trying to make personal connections once we get a vaccine, I suppose. But that was back in the day. And then, I mean, I always enjoy seeing photographers' work. So sending a promo the old school way is great. I do not like getting hounded on the phone. That is like not the, so, but I feel like doing some of the standard promotions is a way to get in front of, and like just really kind of understanding who your network is, and even like through LinkedIn and your social media, like talking about some of the shoots and collaborations. It's like there's so many ways to get your work out there and to to follow, and don't stalk, but follow some of your brands and creatives and that you admire. I think those are all ways to, again, kind of like it seems it's a lot of work. I mean, I remember being a junior designer, and you're just like trying, you want to start working and you want to do all the things, but there's a certain amount of like legwork and getting to know the people in the industry. And there's so many different ways to do that these days. So I hope that's helpful. An answer.
Both of those answers were really helpful. Johnny, I'm not sure where you are, but many of our chapters are still holding Zoom events around the country. And actually at the moment, I guess it doesn't matter where you are. If you take a look on our events page on our website, there's a list there of all the things that are happening. Our New York chapter regularly has a town hall meeting. I believe it's pretty regular. I can't remember the frequency of it at the moment, but it's definitely a place to just hop on. It's an open chat, so that could be pretty helpful. I know our Colorado chapter has a coffee chat happening. I believe that's maybe once a month. Again, it's something you can just hop onto. It's just an open chat. I think networking with other photographers is extremely valuable, especially as you're up and coming. And all of our ASMP members are really interested in helping other people and helping the industry. If you find any that aren't, let me know about them ASAP. But I think in general, you'll find ASMP members willing to share information, willing to help you out, willing to talk to you about how they got to where they are. I had a conversation with somebody just before this call about licensing, realized she was in Rhode Island. Maybe someday we'll meet in person. But ASMP is trying to provide a lot of those opportunities right now because we realize that it's hard to reach out. So keep going. If you have any questions or interested in meeting people or looking for those events, feel free to email me, marianne@asmp-board.org.
Yeah, Marianne, what you said, and just the importance of mentors too, I think is really, and that can come out of these relationships with ASMP, et cetera. But I think, again, there are folks that are willing to share their experiences. So.
Right. So the next question we have is from Ian. He asked, do you suggest putting pitch decks or bids like these together to send to new clients as a first encounter type of piece, or is it better to try and make contact first and then create decks to send? It's kind of an interesting question because I could see something like this maybe being a promo piece without, I think it would have different content, but it could be set up similar.
Absolutely. I think you could take the elements of this and the design aspects to create either an electronic promotion that you're attaching to an email or something you're even printing. But I think it's this treatment does that a direct mail or an email promotion should do are tell a little bit about who you are as an artist, show some examples, and include your branding. So I think the things that you would take out of it, of course, are like, I think it's hard to pitch to them of how you would approach their brand without first having a conversation. I'm curious to hear Brian's thoughts, but I feel like you would have to make a lot of assumptions. And honestly, I feel like anytime I've made those assumptions by looking at a brand online or in the store, I get on the phone with the agency and they're like, oh, we're doing a complete rebrand. That's all trash. And so I've like wasted my time thinking about how we would approach that aesthetic.
Yeah, I feel like the assumptions could just lead to them just dismissing you entirely. So it's like, you gotta be really careful about that because right now we're working on a creative campaign of like what's next once we reopen post-COVID and stuff like that. And so some of the stuff that we're doing now just might not be relevant anymore. So I would err on the side of, showing your work, speaking your strengths and, taking some of, like, as Jenna said, some of those elements out of the pitch deck and repackaging it. It's as a promo piece or a way to reach out for sure.
So we've got one from, and thank you for that, both of you. We've got one from our friend David Butler, the one and only. This is for Brian. He asked, how much does social media presence of an artist affect the pitch or bid process? For example, are you researching how they work via behind the scenes or getting a sense of personality via their posts?
That is interesting, because that is certainly that is an extension of your brand, right? So it's it does impact. I'm not in the business where I'm like, this person has X amount of followers and I'm going to choose them because of that. It's like, that's not, I work for the Natural History Museums here in LA, and it's like, that's not important to us, personally, in terms of reach, but in terms of like being able to open up to, like, if you're able to, about behind the scenes, about how you approach things, or even like, honestly, the things that inspire you, it's like, it doesn't have to be a professionally shot photo. It could just be like, oh, David really enjoys, I don't know, taking hikes. I don't know where you live, but so, or the things. I feel like, especially with like Instagram, you can get a sense of somebody's personality if they're authentic on their platform. So, but it's not one of the main, for me personally, it's not one of the main drivers. I do like seeing like not super perfect work. I can go to your portfolio for that. It's almost like seeing your journal, right? It's like, what are you thinking about when you do create stuff? I enjoy that, and it kind of sheds a little bit more light into, like, rather than just like taking the photos from your website and putting them on your Instagram. It's like, I always love seeing Jenna's out there shooting. She's doing all the stuff, I'm just like, this is like, that's the exciting part. It's like, oh yeah, she's out there, she's working, she's doing stuff, so, or, you're out there on a test shoot, exploring different things, et cetera. It's like, and kind of being a little bit less precious. I know that there are people that have different opinions on that, but that's my perspective on it. So
good. So we've got time for 2 more questions. I purposely am saving one for last, but Jennifer asked, what program would you suggest using to build the bid treatment? So I know there's a program called Canva where you can build those things out, but Brian, do you have something that the not designer photographer might have access to that would work?
I mean, Jenna and I were going through this when we were doing this presentation, because I use Keynote for everything. And it's fairly, I don't know how many people it comes with, Mac and is actually Twitter, when I worked with Twitter, they did so much pitching, and they did everything in Keynote. It's just like, it was a way for me, like, most people were able to use it. I've also, Google Slides is not great, but and Canva, I was actually forced to use because once, which was, it's actually has some nice benefits for the non-designer, for sure. I would also suggest that you build a relationship with a graphic designer, if and usually, for a small amount of time, you can kind of, you can work, get a template that works for you, but built in a program that you have, obviously, because ultimately you're going to export it as a PDF to your to whoever you're pitching. So it's really like what you're kind of most comfortable in. I personally, Keynote is my go-to. So
And Brian, it seemed like the proposal that you showed with myself and Animus, they built that on Keynote, and somehow it came to me over the internet, and I was able to actually work on it before I. So is there like an online
There
situation?
is a cloud situation. I'm glad you mentioned that, because Keynote, you can actually work on a document together. I mean, that's one of the benefits of Google Slides as well, as you can like both be like literally working on it in a Hangout and just like, but yeah, Keynote has like a cloud option so that you can be both collaborating on the same document if you have multiple, like in the instance that you had, Marianne, with your collaborator, you guys could be working on it together and
Yeah,
adding pieces.
cool.
I
And
I would love to reiterate Brian's comment about spending the money up front to hire a graphic designer to make a template for you, especially for those of us who are limited in their graphic design skills. But to pay some money up front to have a template that you can easily tweak with, the specs of each bid, it's like gold.
yeah, that's going to be my next step to my future pitch deck template. But I also I have a few relationships with several designers that I work with, and we're often, speaking with each other about different projects. So that kind of speaks to your network too. You want to, Johnny and other emerging photographers, you want to grow your network beyond just photographers. You want to be meeting website designers. You want to be meeting designers. And even freelance people and non-freelance people. Look around your community. There's so many there's still so many networking opportunities happening. Some of them are happening on Facebook and Facebook groups. Some of them are happening. I think there's some Slack channels where things are happening. So you want to just keep an eye out for those things. All right, our last question. This one's a good one. I hope you guys are ready. So this is from Karina. She asked, what are some mistakes you've seen photographers make after being selected after the bid process? So that's kind of an interesting twist on that. The photographer has gotten the bid, and afterwards maybe something happens.
So after being awarded?
Yeah, this looks like what that question says. I think we could also expand that question a little bit to what are some mistakes you've seen in the bid process? I hope that's okay, Karina.
Well, I highlighted that one story that was really sort of shocking about the photographer who's one of 7 being considered and really botched the creative call and then was, dropped off the list. So, I think a few things that could go wrong in the bidding process are not handling yourself well on the creative call, not having a pitch, your bid treatment ready. I've heard from producers that if they receive a 1-page bid treatment, they're going to toss it. It's not enough for them. They expect to see more. That just right off the bat, seeing 1 page is a turnoff for them. I could sort of go on and on about that, but I think to answer her real question about mistakes, this is something that Brian brought up and something I am like hyper aware of is going over budget, right? So once you're awarded the job and they have signed your cost estimate, it's your job or your producer's job to do everything they can to stay on budget. And, if you go over budget, they're not going to want to work with you again. I mean, there are many other repercussions, but the fact of the matter is that they will not be a repeat client of yours. Of course, there are changes in scope, right? This job that was represented in the treatment that I shared here today, the scope changed as we moved through the production, but it's a big agency and they were great partners with me throughout the process. And as the scope changed, I changed the cost estimate, they approved it, and then we sort of produced against that. So it's all about sort of having that collaboration. I keep saying this word, but like this constant collaboration with your new client in terms of staying on budget, among many other things. Also on deadline, I guess that could be another big miss, is sort of like missing their deadline, not only in terms of shoot date, but also post-production, right? Like many clients have a very specific date that they need to have final files in hand because maybe they're trying to hit a print run for packaging, or, you know, a web update deadline. And so it's really important to understand that those dates are firm and to never miss those deadlines. Brian, what would you say?
I number one is we can't go over budget. And the communication, if there's scope creep, I totally understand, but it needs to be ironed out before that final invoice, because it becomes potentially even more awkward than the initial budget conversation. Is like having this conversation about, oh yeah, we've got like this other couple of $1,000 we need from you, and it's like, what, you know? So anyway, and I, you know, I've had a few instances I'm gonna call them diva antics, where like there's like egos happening in the room. And in my career, it's only happened a few times, but it's like you're 100% not going to get signed up the next time if you're going to like piss off the client or do something like, you know, you got to be your best self, you know, and focusing on getting the work done. And the conversations about creative should be clear. If there's a misunderstanding, it can be handled in a discreet way. It's not, you know, I think there's sometimes some on set antics that happen, and it's like, it's got to be handled professionally. Otherwise you will not be asked back. So that's my only other, and, you know, and also if you can't live up to what you're saying your strengths are, you know, it's like, I'm a people person, and then you can't like talk, you know, somebody to smile, you know, or something, you know, that's a problem, you know? So anyway, so you have to be really authentic up front in your pitch, so that, you know, you can't overpromise and underdeliver. That's 100%.
That's all really great advice. One other thing I would add, if you're not at the level where you're doing these big pitches with a producer and all of that, I think that you should still expect professionalism and excellence from yourself. I think that you should aim high in everything you do, which is why this pitch deck is going to be in my new future. But the other thing that I think is important is, if you're unsure of something, use your mentors and your contacts within ASMP. I almost always on my bigger jobs will send my estimate to another photographer. And I have a group of photographers, depending on what kind of job it is. They all know me pretty well, so it's really easy to send them what I've got. We've talked about pricing together before, and this is kind of a group of people that I've known for a long time. And, you know, they'll often tell me, Marianne, you're not charging enough for yourself here, or, you know, you're going to get shortchanged over here, or, hey, maybe you should spell your name right. So I think all of those things are really important, and having that network to be able to send these things to is really important. So we're going to wrap it up there. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Jenna and Brian. This has really been a lot of information. It's been really great. The webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link once it's up. I know some people had a little trouble logging in, so thanks for your patience in getting in. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all at our next Canon business event in November. So thank you.
Thank you, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you.